I took showers every day, wore perfume, and washed my clothes with fabric softener. And still, people pulled away from me. I only understood why after overhearing my granddaughter whisper that I smelled like an old lady. It felt like a knife straight to the chest. But what truly broke me was discovering that this happens to almost every elderly person, and no one talks about it. Until the day I learned a 5-second shower trick, and everything changed. My name is Gloria. I'm 76 years old, a widow for nearly a decade, and I live alone in a modest little house in Sacramento, California. Despite my age, I don't see myself as fragile. I keep my house clean, go for walks around the block, and whenever I can, I try a new recipe, just to fill the rooms with the comforting smell of home-cooked food. But no bubbling pot ever managed to drown out what I heard that Saturday afternoon. My daughter had come to visit with her 2 kids. The youngest, Emma, just 8 years old, was running around the house with her brother. Everyone was laughing, and I was in the kitchen making lemonade when I heard just behind the door a little voice that froze me in place. "Mom, Grandma smells like old people again." It was a whisper, like a secret no one's supposed to hear. She thought I wouldn't, but I did. Every word. And I froze. The lemon slipped from my hand and landed in the sink with a dull thud that echoed right in my chest. In that moment, it felt like something inside me was being squeezed. It wasn't just the sting of the words. It was what they carried. Distance. A subtle boundary forming between me and the people I love most. A smell. A silent sign that my presence was no longer comfortable. I didn't say anything. I kept stirring the lemonade, pretending I hadn't heard, but something in me cracked. The worst part of getting older, I realized then, isn't the back pain or the wrinkles around your eyes. It's not the blurry vision or the knees that creak on the stairs. The worst part is realizing that, without meaning to, you've started to bother people. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I became self-conscious. It felt like my body had turned against me. I started avoiding hugs. When someone leaned in to greet me, I would gently pull back. I kept all the windows open, tied the curtains back tightly, even on cold days. I placed lavender sachets in the closets, lit incense, bought 2 sweet perfumes that gave me headaches, but I sprayed them anyway, generously before anyone visited. At first, I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just paranoia. But every time Emma hugged me and ran straight back to her brother, a little voice in my head whispered, "She smelled it again." I began avoiding going out on hot days. I was afraid to sweat and make it worse. Clothes I used to wear 2 or 3 times before washing went straight into the laundry after just a few hours, and still, it came back. It was as if something was stuck to me, clinging to my skin, to the air around me, and the shame. Oh, the shame walked beside me, quietly, a shadow that said nothing, but always reminded me I didn't belong as I once had. One night, after taking my second shower of the day, I stood in front of the mirror. I stared at myself, as if searching for an answer. I felt ridiculous. A 76-year-old woman, trying to scrub the scent off her body like it was some kind of curse. I tried to reason with myself. Everyone has a scent, I told myself, but it felt like an excuse, not comfort. Because deep down, I knew the problem wasn't the smell itself, it was what it represented. I started searching online in secret. I was never good with technology, but I gave it a try. I searched things like elderly smell and why do seniors smell different? I found all sorts of things. English language forums with complicated words, strange home remedies on blogs, and videos of people trying to sell miracle body washes. It all seemed so silly, but I was willing to try anything. During that time, I stopped going to church. I was too ashamed to sit close to anyone. I skipped monthly lunches with my friends. I even turned down an invitation to dance in the plaza with a widowed gentleman who had been trying to get close for months. How could I let someone get close when I didn't even feel comfortable with myself? And it was in that silence, that self-imposed isolation, that I discovered a cruel truth. The world doesn't need to scream to push you away. Sometimes all it takes is a child's whisper. But I refused to believe that would be my fate. That couldn't be the end of the story. I couldn't accept that I was meant to spend my last years hiding behind strong perfumes, open windows, and avoided embraces. The smell, that cursed smell, had taken more than my peace of mind. It had started stealing my humanity, and it was there, alone in the bathroom, towel draped over my shoulders, staring into the mirror, that I made a silent vow I would find out where it was coming from, and if there was something, anything that could be done, no matter how odd or difficult or unconventional, I would do it, because no one should be ashamed of being who they are. Not even a 76-year-old woman who smells like memories, clean clothes, and hope. In the days that followed that silent decision in front of the mirror, I started a real investigation. It wasn't just wounded vanity anymore. It was emotional survival. I needed to understand what was happening to me. What was this smell that no soap could remove, that resisted hot water and even expensive perfumes? I began showering twice a day, sometimes even 3 times. I switched my regular soap for an antibacterial charcoal bar that promised deep cleansing. I bought a natural loofah at the pharmacy, and with the determination of a beginner, I started scrubbing elbows, neck, back, feet, everything. At first, I thought I was going a little crazy, but I started noticing a pattern. It always showed up in the late afternoon, when the body grew tired, when warmth settled under the clothes. A subtle yet constant odor, something like clothes that had been stored away too long, with a bit of oiliness, and something else I couldn't quite define, a kind of invisible presence that followed me, as if time itself had a scent, and now it lived in me. I began to suspect my clothes. Maybe they were the problem. I sorted through my older blouses and gave some away. I bought new ones, lighter cotton fabric. I washed everything with baby detergent, added vinegar to the washing machine, let the clothes dry in the sun. Nothing changed. I even replaced my mattress. Yes, the mattress. I'd been saving for months and spent almost all of it on a new one, thinking maybe the smell had sunk into the old one. The delivery men took it away, and with it, my hope that it would solve anything, because the smell, it was still there. In the air, in my clothes, on me. It felt like defeat, like my body was betraying me. That's when I decided to talk to someone who would never judge me. My friend Marla, 81 years old, who lives just around the corner. Marla is one of those women who says what she thinks and doesn't shy away from taboo topics. She listened in silence, served me a cup of fennel tea, and said, "Gloria, you're not the first to tell me this. I felt it on myself too. Some days it's like I'm living inside an old drawer. But you know, I think it's got something to do with our skin." It was the first time I heard someone say it out loud without sugarcoating. Living inside an old drawer. That made me laugh and hurt at the same time, because it was true. That same night, I decided to look for more serious information. I went to a health website my daughter always recommends. I typed in body odor in elderly people, and that's when I came across a word I'd never seen before. Nonenal. According to the article, it's a substance released by the skin as we age, the result of oxidizing fatty acids. They said it's a natural part of aging, especially in areas like the back, neck, and underarms, and more. Regular soaps can't remove it. My eyes stopped on one particular sentence. Nonenal is the primary cause of what's commonly referred to as old people's smell. Almost no one talks about it. I shut the laptop. I felt a mix of anger, relief, and sorrow. So that was it? A chemical compound that my body now produced, as if aging had its own odor? A silent message to the world that I was crossing some invisible line? I stood up slowly, my eyes filling with tears. I went back to the mirror, looked at my face, my shoulders, my arms. This was the same body that had cradled my babies, danced at 1970s parties, made love and survived loss. And now, it was a body that smelled like time. I felt outraged. Why hadn't anyone told me this before? Why wasn't this in any pamphlet at the health clinic? Or in the books I read about menopause, aging, and self-care? It felt like we'd been betrayed. We, women in our golden years, taught to take care of the house, the husbands, the children, but never taught to care for ourselves. No one prepared us for the feeling of losing control over even our own scent. I spent days stewing in that frustration. I thought about my mother, my aunts, the church ladies. How many of them had gone through this in silence? How many were avoided, hugged quickly, kept at a distance, with no idea why? I started asking myself, is this it then? Are we all doomed to stink until we die? It was a cruel thought, but that's how I felt. Hurt, invisible, and now labeled by my scent. That's when I realized, for me, the smell had become a symbol. It wasn't just the odor anymore. It was what it triggered in people. Pity, disgust, avoidance. It was like the world was whispering, "You had your time. Now, move to the corner where you won't disturb anyone." But I didn't want the corner. I wanted the dinner table, the dance, the long hug. I wanted my granddaughter jumping into my lap without wrinkling her nose. So I made up my mind. Even if I didn't yet know how, I would find a way to beat that nonenal, even if it meant scrubbing every inch of my body with coarse salt and holy herbs. I was almost ready to give up. After so many failed attempts, so many changes that led nowhere, I started to accept that maybe it really was just a natural part of aging, that this nonenal was simply another one of those quiet little humiliations that come with getting older. But life has its own strange ways of surprising us, and in my case, it chose to do so through a silly little video on the internet. It was a warm night. Insomnia had come to visit again, as it did most nights. I was on the couch, the fan blowing directly at my face, holding my daughter's old phone. She had lent it to me while hers was being repaired. With little hope, I opened YouTube and typed, "How to get rid of old people smell." Between ads for overpriced soaps and videos with over-the-top titles, one thumbnail caught my eye. It was an older woman with her hair in a bun and a floral blouse. The title read, "5-second shower trick to eliminate aging odor." Simple, direct, even kind of cheesy. But I clicked. She spoke calmly, with that southern accent that reminded me of my great aunt. She said that just like me, she had struggled with her body odor after turning 70. She talked about how she had done lots of research on nonenal and how no regular soap could fix it. The secret, she claimed, was a small ritual during the shower, and the way she explained it made it all feel surprisingly possible. She shared a homemade solution, apple cider vinegar, mixed with a few drops of sage and peppermint essential oils. All you had to do was apply it to the key areas, underarms, neck, back, during the shower, while your skin was still wet. Let it sit for a few seconds, then rinse normally. I wrinkled my nose. Vinegar? Sage? That couldn't possibly work, could it? But there was something about her voice, a glow in her eyes, a quiet confidence, as if she were saying, "This changed my life." I closed the video and went to bed. But the next day, that little mixture stuck in my mind. And then I thought, what do I have to lose? I went to the local natural products store and bought the ingredients. I already had vinegar at home. The essential oils cost less than I expected. By the end of the day, everything was ready. I went into the shower with no great expectations. The hot water ran down my back, just like always. I poured some of the mixture into a small bowl and, using a soft sponge, began applying it to my back, neck, and underarms. The vinegar smell was strong at first, but soon the peppermint took over. Fresh, light, almost invigorating. I closed my eyes and stood there in silence, counting to 15. I rinsed, dried off, put on a clean outfit, and waited. That night, I slept better. The next day, something curious happened. I was folding laundry from the line and noticed something different about my blouses. They no longer had that stale undertone. It wasn't perfume. It was the absence of that old smell. It was as if my body had been reset. I kept using the mixture every evening during my shower. Each application became a small ritual. I passed the sponge gently, like I was tending to something sacred. And little by little, something inside me began to shift. On the 8th morning, my daughter showed up by surprise with the kids. Emma ran straight toward me, threw her arms around me, and said, "Grandma, you smell good." I froze. My throat tightened. I looked at my daughter, who smiled in surprise. I smiled back, my eyes watering, trying not to cry, but the tears came anyway. Warm, light, like a soft rain washing a dusty rooftop after months without water. In that hug, I felt like the world was giving something back to me, something I didn't even know I had lost. The right to be close, to be a body, not just a memory, to exist in a space without making anyone uncomfortable, without fear. That same week, I decided to go back to church. I wore one of my favorite dresses, a blue floral I hadn't touched in over a year. I put on a bit of lipstick, fixed my hair, and left the house with a feeling I hadn't had in a long time, dignity. When I arrived, one of the women from the choir hugged me and said, "Gloria, you look radiant. What perfume are you wearing?" I smiled. I wasn't wearing any perfume, just vinegar, sage, and peppermint. But it was more than that. It was like washing my body had somehow cleansed a guilt I hadn't realized I carried. The guilt of being a burden, of no longer being welcome, the guilt of aging in silence, as if time were something to be hidden, a mistake to be masked. From that day on, my showers were no longer routine. They became ritual, a moment just for me where I didn't just wash my body. I remembered how to care for myself with gentleness, with intention, with love, because it was never just about smelling nice. It was about learning how to exist again, After that magical week when my granddaughter hugged me without hesitation, something inside me woke up. It was like I had finally stepped back into my own body, as if my presence was no longer a burden to others or to myself. And it wasn't just the scent, it was what came with it. A new lightness in my steps, a quiet kind of courage, a gaze in the mirror that no longer looked away in shame. The following Sunday, I sat in my usual spot at church and noticed people smiling when I walked in. The lady in the pew ahead complimented my blue dress. A man in a hat, who had only ever nodded shyly before, waited for me at the exit and said, "Miss Gloria, you smell like spring today." Spring. I walked home with that word dancing in my head because that's exactly how it felt. After years of living in the autumn of life, wilting, drying up, slowly fading, I finally felt like I was blooming again. My showers became more than just hygiene. They turned into sacred rituals. I would put on soft music, light a lavender candle, and carefully mix the vinegar with the essential oils. Sometimes I'd add a few drops of geranium, other times, lemon. And there, as the water ran down my skin, I felt myself reconnecting with me. It was self-care that went far beyond the surface. It was recovery, a reunion with the Gloria that existed before the widowhood, before the aches, before the silence. And the effects reached far beyond scent. My daughter started visiting more often, without me even needing to ask. We'd sit on the couch, drink tea, and laugh about silly old memories. My grandchildren hugged me with the same ease as before, nestling their heads against my neck, sitting on my lap, asking me for stories again. Even my church friends noticed. During our book group, one of them pulled me aside and said, "Tell me what you're doing. Your hair looks great, your skin's glowing, and that scent. Girl, you're standing taller." I laughed, and I told her. Honestly, I told her about the video, the vinegar, the oils, the hurt, the shame, and the healing. The next week, she showed up with the recipe written on a little slip of paper. Said her sister was going to try it too. Somehow, that little ritual began to spread among us, women who had been hiding our bodies for years. And I realized just how many of us there were. So many carrying the weight of time like guilt instead of wearing it as honor. So many ashamed of smelling like what we are, alive, human, with stories in our pores. One afternoon, I stopped by the little market on the corner. As I left, I saw the man with the hat sitting on a bench. He stood up, smiled, and said, "You know, Miss Gloria, I've always thought you were elegant, but lately, you've been giving off something different. I can't explain it. It's like you have more life." I laughed, a little shy, and thanked him. That night, as I got home, I kept thinking, was it really just the scent? Or is it that, when we feel good on the inside, it naturally escapes through our skin, our eyes, the way we walk? Maybe it was both. The truth is, that simple homemade shower trick did more than get rid of the too nonenal. It gave me back something I didn't even realize I had lost, the desire to exist in the world. Because when you feel unwanted, you start to shrink without noticing. You slowly disappear. You avoid touch, mirrors, the outdoors. Your voice quiets. Your gestures fade. You take up less space. And the saddest part, no one notices, because that kind of fading happens in silence. But I came back. I came back with the scent of peppermint and sage. I came back smelling like dignity. Today, when I look in the mirror, I see more than wrinkles. I see scars that hold stories. I see eyes that have cried through loss, but danced through joy. I see a body that may not be firm anymore, but it is whole. And every time I breathe in the gentle aroma of my bath blend, I close my eyes and say thank you, because that scent isn't just pleasant. It's proof that I healed, that I resisted being forgotten. It's funny how something so simple can cause such a profound shift. But sometimes that's all it takes, a new scent, to change the way the world sees you. And more importantly, how you see yourself. My name is Gloria. I'm 76 years old. And today, if someone tells me I smell like an old lady, I'll smile and answer, I smell like someone who lived and who's still living. If you've stayed with me until the end of my story, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You didn't just listen to an old woman talking about her struggles with a scent. You heard the voice of someone who spent years feeling invisible and finally found the courage to return to herself. Thank you for giving me your time, your ears, and maybe a little piece of your heart. If you're going through something similar, please remember this. You are not alone, and you are not a burden. You are a story still being written, a presence that still matters.